Within the last 6 months, the CEOs of Nestle, Boeing, Starbucks, Peloton, Paramount, Zillow, Amazon Web Services, Snowflake, Hertz, HSBC, Grayscale, Under Armour, Papa John's, and Discover have all stepped down, voluntary or otherwise, from the top job. Collectively, these CEOs controlled companies with trillions of dollars in annual revenue.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parts Talk. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now today we're going to be doing a reaction to a video, and it's from the channel How Money Works. I really recommend this channel. They have some great videos there. This one is entitled Why a Record Number of CEOs Are Resigning. But they're not resigning enough because, as you know, the state of the automotive sector is in a little bit of a downturn, a deep downturn, and I don't hear any of the current CEOs running these companies stepping down. As a matter of fact, workers are being laid off by the thousands every month or so ever since the downturn in the economy, caused mainly due to the pandemic. Some will coin it the scamdemic, but also it has come with high interest rates, high inflation, and other things amongst people now striking. The UAW and other workers have been striking. The unions have been up in arms over the bargaining of higher wages. However, what we're seeing also in this particular sector is the high amount of salaries that are being paid to the CEOs, and no fault to them. I think you should be compensated based on the value you bring, but at the same time, the pressure and the stress that they're undergoing was also amplified by the recent EV mandate put to them by our current regime, which is here in the West. So without further ado, let us go directly into this video, and I will leave the link in the description box below. They have over 1 million subscribers, so that tells you the type of content they're putting out. How Money Works, check it out. Let's get this rolling. And let me also reiterate, fair use. Hopefully they don't ding me. A lot of content creators now, they're going after other persons like myself who are trying to build, but I can tell you the production on this particular channel and this video is superb. Check it out.
Within the last 6 months, the CEOs of Nestle, Boeing, Starbucks, Peloton, Paramount, Zillow, Amazon Web Services, Snowflake, Hertz, HSBC, Grayscale, Under Armour, Papa John's, and Discover have all stepped down, voluntary or otherwise, from the top job. Collectively, these CEOs controlled companies with trillions of dollars in annual revenue, and now they are all gone. These were just the big names too. CEO turnover in companies of all sizes is now higher than it has been since the start of the pandemic, which begs the question, why is this happening? And why is it happening now?
The CEO's going after 2 years, another headcount reduction.
YouTube chief Susan Wojcicki, she is stepping down. She announced so in a blog post. And
Starbucks' CEO Lakshman Narasimhan is now stepping down as CEO and director. That is effective immediately. The company has named Chipotle's CEO.
Chief executives and other C-suite executives are just employees like any other, which means eventually they either quit, get fired, or die in their jobs. CEO layoffs have spiked, but maybe that's not too surprising considering layoffs in a lot of industries have also spiked. But this is actually not normally how it goes. If you ever find yourself in the top job at a major company, you should know that your position is simultaneously far more secure and far more fickle than the average rank-and-file employee working under you. As a CEO, your position is unique because there is no other employee at the company with the authority to fire you. The only people that can do that are the board of directors, who themselves are representatives of the shareholders. During periods of uncertainty, the last thing that companies want to do is switch up senior leadership unexpectedly, because that signals to the market that something is not right, which could tank the stock price. Since the board of directors represent shareholders and individual directors usually are major shareholders themselves, they have an incentive to avoid doing anything that could hurt the stock price unnecessarily. For this reason, CEOs are rarely fired outright and are instead offered generous exit packages to step down amicably in a way that won't scare investors in the business.
Yeah, and if you're in a particular position, especially at certain companies, they will ask you to resign and then give you some compensation package. HR tends to do that as it relates to certain cases, and most of these CEOs, what they do, they work on contracts. They will be given 3 to 5 year contracts with hope of turning these companies around, and if that is not being done according to the strategic plan plan that was actually put in place at the time, and the shareholders aren't happy, they will try to fast forward or push that CEO through the door as much as possible when expectations doesn't actually come through. Let's continue.
High-profile cases where the business has clearly been mismanaged, or in cases where the CEO has made very unpopular decisions, it can be hard to tell if outgoing CEOs have been pushed out or are simply retiring. According to Fortune magazine itself, the average age of a Fortune 500 CEO is 57 years old, and the average compensation package was $16.3 million. If you are that old and have that much money, it's not unthinkable that you would want to retire or pursue less intense roles more suited to your old age, like political office.
Back in the days, CEOs were much older than in the 50s. They were in their 60s and their 70s. And most companies, well, in the automotive sector, there was a thing called succession planning. And CEOs would not be turning over so fast as they're doing now. They will actually work on a particular project to get the company up and running. Well, I'm trying to relate everything as it is to dealerships. I work in the dealership environment. So there was a succession planning system in place for dealerships and automotive group. And that CEO, when his tenure be coming to an end, he will actually step aside or go somewhere else and become a consultant to another part of the group or go to another dealership. And then someone in line will actually come forward. Case in point, Soji Kato, who was the CEO for Lexus, have been appointed the chairman and new CEO for the Toyota Motor Corporation. Akio Toyoda actually stepped down. He is the chairman, but he was also the CEO. And then when something happened, they were up in arms with his stance against the EV mandate and wanted to push more hybrid. Well, his gamble paid off, and Toyota is currently leading with the amount of sales as it relates to hybrid vehicles. They're now caught up in some wranglings as it relates to emissions scandal there in Japan, but the case continues. But what I want to throw you and to reiterate the fact that succession planning is needed, especially when the company is so large. It's a contingent, it's a group of company, they're a part of a CEO 500 contingent, and you have to look down the line and train up leaders within that. You don't even hear that term anymore, leadership within a company.
But if CEO exits are treated so seriously and secretively, why has there been such a big spike all of a sudden? Well, the first reason is that right now is a convenient time for a shakeup. Companies and their leadership don't always have completely aligned incentives. A CEO wants to make as much money as possible while in their role, and the business wants to maximize returns to its shareholders. While these incentives can be aligned through bonus packages tied to stock performance, this has made a lot of company leaders hyperfixated on quarterly financials and the stock price on the day their bonus is calculated. Stocks in most large public companies have actually been trading relatively flat. Total stock market performance has been massively bolstered by Microsoft, Google's parent company Alphabet, Nvidia, and Apple, to a lesser extent. Most other public companies have been trading relatively flat, which isn't a problem during uncertain times like the pandemic and its recovery. But investors are now starting to expect more out of their businesses, and specifically their CEOs during a drawn-out period of slow growth. Former CEO of Starbucks, Laxman Narasimhan, was pushed out after spending just over a year in the top job. While he officially stepped down, it was clear that the company performance was bad, and he was forced out by the board after sluggish earnings reports were released. He was replaced by Brian Niccol, the CEO of Chipotle, a brand which, by comparison, has been doing extremely well. This one move replaced the CEOs of two companies, and the decision was largely pushed through by activist investors like Elliott Management, who, according to CNBC, purchased a large stake in the company in mid-July. This firm and others like it buy up large stakes in companies that are not doing too well and try to enact—
Pause right there, fair use. But I like that term, activist management, such as that consulting firm. What they do, they purchase large shares so they can have a say in the performance of the company. But that particular word, activism, if you have shares within a company and you have interest within a particular company, it's incumbent on you to try to understand and know exactly what's going on. But that terminology, activism, it is used in particularly in today's social structure, where you have a lot of companies now, they have been hiring activists. It comes in the form of today's DEI programs, and that has allowed companies to perform poorly. Case in point, Budweiser, Harley Davidson is the recent victim falling to that right now, and people, they don't want to be caught up in such thing. But the point I'm making here with hiring this manager from Chipotle who has a track record of making businesses successful. Long gone are the days when a CEO will actually come in who has the track record of turning companies around. The problem we have today is rife with nepotism and people who are a part of a particular social club. They are given a blight or a pass to come. This is where we are now and why you see the automotive sector is in so much shambles. Let's continue.
Changes to turn the company around. This can be as simple as suggestions like offering new products, but it's usually more focused on cutting unnecessary expenses and shaking up leadership to generate the highest possible return in the shortest possible time. This particular type of investing strategy is extremely attractive in stagnant markets where it's harder to generate strong returns by just buying something and passively waiting for it to be worth more. This has already worked for Elliott Management. After the announcement of the new CEO, the company stock jumped by a massive 24%, fully recovering its losses from its poor earnings report. If the investment firm cashed out on their position now, they would have already outperformed expected annual returns in a little over a month. Starbucks is a high-profile example, but activist investors across the country and the rest of the world are looking for similar opportunities. So many CEOs in stagnant companies are taking it upon themselves to bow out before they are forced out. Now, if you are not a CEO, you might not be too worried about the games that the company directors play with finance bros and their appointed CEOs. But it's time to learn how money works to find out why the great CEO purge is likely to impact you more than it is the people in the C-suite. The CEOs that did well during a stable upmarket are not the same kind of CEOs that businesses are going to want when sales are flat. If businesses can't grow revenue, the only option they have left to increase their profit is to cut their expenses. Of course, they could be happy with consistent, predictable returns. But let's be real, that just makes them an even bigger target for activist investors looking for their next company to turn around. Now, this isn't always bad. Established companies often do pick up a lot of dead weight over the years, from underperforming product lines to bloated middle management. It's normally much easier to add something to the business than it is to take it away. Activist investors may be a nightmare for existing CEOs, but they can genuinely help to save businesses that are collapsing under their own weight by putting a subjective set of eyes on the business and its operations. The only problem, if a new CEO is hired with the objective to cut costs, they are going to cut costs no matter what.
So the way you actually make money, you cut costs or you increase sales, but they are going to cut costs first and they're going to go in and try to get as lean as possible. And the first cost they're going to cut is people. Some will actually go in and order HR to do a forensic audit, a desk audit on the entire company to see exactly who is needed and who is not needed. Case in point again, Twitter. When Elon Musk took over, he fired 75% of the staff, saying that the company was bloated, overstaffed, and didn't need all that hands on deck. Couple years after he took over, Twitter is still there, proving his case in point. Let's continue.
Second reason behind the current CEO purge. Brian Niccol, the new CEO of Starbucks, made investors so excited that the stock jumped 23% upon his announcement. He is clearly a competent company leader, but for his services, Starbucks is paying him $130 million in his first year alone, according to Yahoo Finance and company filings. If the name of the game was to cut down on expenses wherever possible, that is an interesting place to start. The real reason that investors are so excited about this new CEO is that he also isn't meant to be in the top job for long. Niccol has a long history of being extremely heavy-handed with cost-cutting measures, which have admittedly included streamlining the operations of Chipotle in his last job.
Yeah, they call these turnaround CEOs. I mentioned earlier, I was basically jumping the gun, but I mentioned earlier, a lot of CEOs, executives, managers with a track record, a proven track record of performance, they will move from company to company and they will go into alien companies and turn those companies around. They will actually ask for the price what they need. I actually worked with a couple of these CEOs, one back in Jamaica, another one I met who was out of Trinidad and Tobago. The global company actually sent these individuals to various countries to turn various dealerships around, and what they brought was their actual blueprint. They will travel all over the world, and this is why I'm very big on benchmarking and best practices. They know exactly what the blueprint is to turn companies around, and they will customize that blueprint to facilitate the culture in which they're now residing. And believe it or not, it actually works. The hardest task they had to do was to get people to buy into the mission, the vision, and the values of where they want to go, along with the strategic plan, whether it be short term, midterm or long-term strategic. That's basically what it is. And each department had to come up with their action plan to tie into the entire vision of the company. Sadly, a lot of people no longer have this type of experience. Nepotism is killing the auto industry. Let's continue.
Also meant coming down hard on employee benefits, cutting down on staffing, closing underperforming stores, and pushing back hard against unionization efforts from staff trying to collectively push back against these cuts. Starbucks is currently dealing with its own unionization efforts, and the part of this new CEO's job that the company won't talk about in their press release is to shut this shit down like he did at Chipotle. The company isn't expecting to pay him hundreds of millions of dollars for more than a few years. They are just hoping to pay him long enough to fix their problems before he moves on to another company that will pay him a huge signing bonus, and then Starbucks can replace him with a longer-term CEO that is only paid a modest salary measured in the mere tens of millions. These people are unofficially called turnaround CEOs because their job is to turn a company around and then get out as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And their bonus structures are normally written to pay them a lot of money for quick results. Of course, the company will never publicly admit this plan, so that prediction is based off my experience with other companies employing turnaround management. Although, if for some reason you are watching this video 5 years after it's posted and Nickel is still the top dog at Starbucks, feel free to leave a comment telling me how stupid I am.
When I talk about CEOs who actually go into turnaround companies, take a look at this report. Big three car makers paid their CEOs $1 billion since 2010 and now say they can't afford to pay striking workers what they're demanding. This other report says automakers' CEO compensation rose nearly 80% in 2021. We're now in 2024, but it basically tells you exactly where they want to be. Further down in the article, it says Elon Musk was far from the only CEO whose pay increased last year. Across all automaker CEO compensation rose by 78% in 2021, and the median for all CEO was 12.3 million, up from 2020 when it was about 6.9 million. For CEOs who had been in their position for the last 2 years, meanwhile, median compensation actually rose by 90%. Mary Barra, the third highest paid automaker CEO on the list, earned 62 million in 2021 and up from 40 million a year earlier. Peter Rawlinson, meanwhile, who has been Lucid CEO since 2019, made $67 million. And I did mention Elon Musk made $23.5 billion in 2021, which made him the highest paid chief executive at a publicly traded US company in the automotive industry. And this is mostly because of Tesla shares that was given to him to inflate his compensation package. But the funniest thing about all these packages is that most of them are paid in shares, and when the shares go up, that's when their profit sharing actually comes in. But when the shares tank, so does their fortune. Let's continue.
These short-term CEOs inherently increase turnover rates as they jump between companies providing their services. And turnaround CEOs are more popular with investors in markets where it's harder to find value. Now, the final reason that CEOs are quitting in record numbers is the simplest reason, which is that they really don't need to work anymore. The average CEO is older now than they have ever been before, and a lot of them just want to retire. But during the pandemic, their companies tried to hold on to them to maintain corporate stability. According to the corporate law firm Challenger Gray, Q1 2024 had the highest number of CEO resignations since they started keeping records. The number one reason that CEOs gave for leaving was to retire, given how much they were paid during the pandemic and the strong market returns of their investments over that period. The modern CEO is also expected to be more tech-savvy and public-facing, prompting many of the old guard to make an exit before their marketing team orders them to do a TikTok dance. Now, you might think I am joking, but this new wave of corporate culture has had a serious impact on the C-suite. CEOs may be missing out on some job security, but that's probably not their biggest problem. Companies are shaking up the pool of chief financial, marketing, operating, and executive officers with chief enthusiasm officers, chief amazement officers, and chief heart officers. These are real jobs held by real people in real companies. I am going to be writing about this trend over on my completely free email newsletter linked in the video description.
Thank you very much. How Money Works. Make sure you check out his channel. I'll leave the link in the description box below. But before we go, last but not least, this article here by USA Today that says, as UAW Detroit 3 fight over wages, here's a look at auto worker pay, CEO compensation. And the part of the article that stood out is says Detroit 3 CEO compensation. And as far as compensation to the CEOs, 29 million for GM's Mary Barra, 21 million for Ford's Jim Farley, and 24.8 million for Stellantis in 2022. As the Free Press recently noted, these weren't even the highest payout to an individual last year at the companies, and this was back in 2023. Not hating on their pay, they are truly deserve it to be at the top. They actually work themselves to the bone to get to where they want to be, leading these companies. But right now, seemingly like the automotive sector is not performing the way it should they be compensated based on what the performance of these companies are. And in light of what is happening, their workers are being laid off, or the plants are being shut down or temporarily closed in order to facilitate what's going on in the market. You decide. As usual, it's always the workers who has to pay, and we, the consumers, who can't afford to even buy a car right now because the prices have gone up again. It doesn't matter how many experts, so-called car experts or car enthusiasts, come and tell you when it's the best time to purchase a car. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. If you don't have the disposable income to budget, set aside to pay for that car, and it doesn't eat into your monthly expenses, do not buy that car. If you don't need it, please wait. You want to welcome back the days when you can take up less than $200, less than $100, and make bi-weekly payment and enjoy some of the finer things in life without stressing yourself too much, or having nightmares when you go to sleep and when you get up in the morning that car isn't there because the reaper man is outside with his tow truck waiting for you to just sign off. That's basic. If you don't want to have that type of nightmare and you want to sleep good at night, do not stress trying to pay over $700, almost $800 on monthly payment for a car. We have the right to stand off, and automakers also have a right to try and lower their prices and go back to the drawing board and pressure the government to do much better in terms of fiscal management. That's my 2 cents for today. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to grab a copy of my ebook, The Parts Manager Guide. Please smash that like button on your way out. It'll only take you 1.5 seconds to do so. I really hope you enjoy this one. I'll see you in the next video.